talk about navigating the Malvertising nightmare. I've been watching Sandman. Anyone else watching Sandman? Right? So, we won't talk about that because I didn't prep you for that question, so good thing. I feel like I'm too far away. We'll go over closer. All right. So, gentlemen, let's talk a little about Malvertising. Let's talk about a little bit about security and so forth. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then when you went through Border Patrol at the airport, what did you tell them that you do?
Sure. I am Guyton-Bradley. I am Senior Director of Programmatic Advertising Operations at RedVentures. I oversee the CMG group, which is CNET, Media Group at RedVentures. So I heard that a lot of you had challenges going through, customs. I told them I was on vacation. So they didn't ask me all the questions about what do you do for work, where are you going for work. I'm here on vacation. So if anybody asks you what I'm doing here, I'm on vacation. So that's the easiest way. I travel internationally quite a bit, and for work as well. We have offices in London. If you're going international, just tell them you're on vacation. When you tell them you're there for work, they're going to ask you a million questions and you're never going to get out. All right?
Did you have to explain the number of hats that you brought with you?
Shoes. So I also have 10 pairs of sneakers in one of my suitcases, and I realized I had opened my suitcase when I picked up my bag, and I immediately laid my bag down and opened it up to see if all my sneakers were still in it. Justin, I don't know if you work for security at the airport, but I think I'm missing a pair of sneakers.
There's an underlying sneaker culture emerging within this whole conference. I think we should have warned people. Cormac.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Cormac Breslin. I'm a senior CSM at Confiant, and I'm in a unique position where I actually look after publishers and platforms. So I've got a kind of a bird's eye view from both directions.
So SSPs,
SSPs, DSPs, and publishers. Okay. Yeah. So just look after their day-to-day stuff and keep them informed on all the new products and exciting initiatives that we're working on. And to answer your question about the airport, when I asked what I was doing, I said I worked in security, and I got a kind of a look from the security guy, and then I had to elaborate and tell them exactly why I was here, and he said, that's pretty cool, and got through that way. Yeah. But I will use the vacation thing the next time because it's much easier.
Better than I'm with security.
Yeah. In hindsight, vacation.
Maybe use your boss or whatever. Yeah. That can work.
Undercover boss.
Anything to get us out of the airports quicker and faster, I think, is going to be a thing. All right, let's talk about security on our sites. Again, I think there's this underlying theme that we've talked about over the course of the day already, and will continue, right, of the user experience that we have to, think of it this way, we have to build our businesses off trust. And if users come to our websites and they get Malvertising, they pin it on you, right? It's not something you can kind of just dismiss. Terry, I know you went through kind of an evaluation process. Can you talk a little bit about how it came to be, to how you approached that, and who was involved, and so forth?
Sure. So one of the things that we were talking about in another session is collaboration with your operations team. Not just collaborations with your operations teams, but also collaborations with your data and security teams. It's important for us in this age to collaborate across the board. A lot of us want to put our stake in the ground and just say, hey, I own this, and I'm going to make a decision, and you're just going to have to go with it. But the way that the industry is moving, it's important for us to break down those walls and remove ourselves from those silos and have those conversations with other stakeholders. So at RedVentures, not only did the AdOps team, which includes programmatic and direct operations, but also we had conversations with our product team and also our data and security team to actually do a review. That's the word. A review of all of the vendors that were coming to help us out with Malvertising. Eventually, we did decide on going with Confiant, but it was not my decision. I wasn't, making a decision on my own to just say, hey, Confiant is a friend of mine, and a lot of us make decisions off of relationships that we had. We make decisions off of relationships that we have and people that we know, and how many times they've taken us out to drinks But in this day and age, we have to, make an intelligent decision, especially when it comes to security of our sites, on which vendor actually works best for us.
So can I cut you off 1 second? Just because I think, again, our sponsors are here to help us as a group, right? And I think the one thing that, to your point, that I've just seen more and more often, almost every decision is a multi-departmental decision at a publisher.
Yep.
And it's not the best setup. I wish we were more digital than we are in some ways. We break those silos down or whatever. But that becomes kind of a part of the thing of like helping us advocate, right? So in other words, to your point, you get that relationship and whatever, and you got to make that case, but realize there's one decision maker probably doesn't exist. It's usually a committee.
And that's the thing is when you call me and say, hey, Terry, let's start something up. The next question needs to be, who else do I need to talk to? Who else in your team do I need to get to know and maybe take out to lunch? Or just literally explain what your product is before a decision is made. And so that's that process that we went through at RedVentures in order to really decide on who were the best vendors to help us deal with the challenge of malvertising. We have some really high security sites that we really need to make sure that we are securing in the best way.
Yep. Talk about, like, again, you work with publishers all the time on these types of decisions and so forth. Can you talk about, again, like what you see from your vantage point?
Yeah, well, one of the things with us is we deal with publishers of varying sizes. So on any given day, I could be talking to an AdOps person from a small company. Next day, I could be talking to like the head of monetization from someone else. So I have to tailor my conversations with them and be able to almost change my language to suit the conversation. So that's a challenge that I find every day. And one of the things, and I'll give a shout out to our product team, our UI, when it comes to actually showing various people what we do and the control that we can give you through our UI, through our product, it's very easy to do so because it's laid out in such a way that it does appeal to people from different roles, and I think it's very well laid out that way.
Yeah. So dive in, Terry, a little deeper in terms of, so who did come to the table in terms of that decision, and then again, what was that evaluation like? What were some of the things that were key?
Sure. So at the table was our COO, our head of data and security, myself as the head of programmatic, and then some of you guys know Tim Olenek. Tim is the head of our direct AdOps team. So we were all at the table pitching, who we thought were, the vendors of our choice, and we literally sat and we dwindled down and looked at what their offerings were. Saw, how we would continue to, one, secure our sites, but two, make money. You don't want to just block an ad. That's one thing, hey, I just want to get rid of this ad. Your CEO is calling or your CMO is calling, and they're screaming at you, or your head of sales is calling about the pop-ups that are happening on the weekend, and you just want to get rid of the ads. But then the thing is, like, we sat and we really wanted to understand, it's like, okay, we're blocking these ads, but how do we continue to make money along the way in that process? So as we did that evaluation, we were able to drill down and really see what the offerings were and how each vendor would be able to help us in those needs.
So that's interesting, right? Because again, when you think about this from a security standpoint, and again, I'll put this out there, right? It is very difficult to know amongst the companies that are in the security space who's doing what necessarily better at that piece. You could tell me I'm wrong, right? But there's a part of it, like from I don't know, like, wow, your ability to do this across multiple CDNs, like, you know better than I do, right? But there's a piece of it of like how that conversation turned to revenue. I want to get back to that, but I'm kind of curious about, like, again, like how does one evaluate these options when you don't really know what's behind the scenes?
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen as well is different publishers will almost rank security vendors on how much they block, the actual quantity or the volume of blocks, and we're all about like the quality of the blocks. Like we don't want to overblock. Nobody wants to do that. We don't want to underblock, especially not do that. So it's about the quality of what you're blocking, the things that you're finding, and not overdoing it.
So that's interesting, right? So what you're saying is overblocking, and this is kind of what your point is, that if you feel like there's a threat or you feel like something, but it's either it's not, like where that line is, right? But also the fact that if you are going to block something, you still want something to serve, right? So can you talk a little bit about that technology? I mean, Terry, again, from your perspective, what you're seeing or how that works?
From our perspective, you know, in the setup, in the UI, we were able to put in definitions and say, hey, these are the types of ads in which we want to block. We don't want, you know, the overly flashy ads to come through. We don't want, you know, for those of, I'm gonna, as everyone has done, I'm going to age myself. Remember the dancing lady, the with the lady ads that came through, addicts.
What about Punch the Monkey? Who remembers Punch the Monkey?
Ads that came through, addicts. So those.
Oh shit, I've aged out.
Nobody knows the Punch the Monkey dance.
Thank you. Some Punch the Monkey. Okay, thank God. That was right.
Wow.
They're
They're young, Rob. They're young. You guys.
I may need assistance to get off this stage at this point. All right. Okay. Fine.
Next time I'll bring my walker. But we want to make sure that we're not seeing those ads. And one thing, the interesting thing is that our CEO, he's not necessarily, if you guys know, some of you guys know RedVentures, but RedVentures was not necessarily a digital company to start. So he doesn't know very much about digital. He decided to diversify and brought in digital properties. He calls programmatic remnant. He still calls programmatic remnant. I see the look, and that's exactly how I looked at him. I was like, that is such an insult. So like, he called programmatic remnant, and he blames those remnant ads for bad user experiences. So we brought in Confiant because we wanted to make sure that we could identify what our CEO was considering to be a bad user experience. And it was the flashy ads, it was the dancing lady or the punch the monkey ads, or it was those ads about, you know, get a colon test, you know, or things like that that didn't really, may not have really, you know, been for him at that point. So we were able to put in those definitions of what we consider to be bad actors, and they were able to find them, identify them, and block them out, and then replace them with something that was more relevant.
So it's even more than just security, it's ad quality and all those particular pieces. Can you talk about again? And of course, also just, if it makes sense, your relationship with the SSPs and the other technology companies, you know, there is a piece of this of like, he's the last line here. What do you do at SSP to protect me or help handle me with the ad? Yes.
Yeah.
Says Terry. Yes.
It's in the last, I would say maybe even year or so, I've definitely seen, like first and foremost for the SSPs, it's all about security is number one. I mean, there's no question of that. But I've seen more and more interest in looking into our quality attributes that we return as well when we, you know, through the API or whatever they use for that. So yeah, there's more and more interest in having control over those quality issues as well, so that they're not passed on to the publisher. So we've definitely seen an uptick in that.
I mean, I'll build off that of something that I've heard LD from Confiant talk about in the past, right? Of their, and again, not promising, that's right, it's him saying it, but like just the idea that like if we lock down our ecosystem to keep the bad actors out, right? This cost is not something that gets shouldered completely by the publisher. Right, we're the ones that get the blame when the bad ads happen, and we're the ones that are paying for that security, but we're not the ones that necessarily put that ad up there. I mean, this is not as much an issue for direct as it is for programmatic, right? But that battle for the remnant thing, dude, I feel you on that. I feel you on that.
The challenge I have is that I realize that from a technology side, it may not be much of a benefit to block out those bad actors. And I know some people are going to scream at me and probably throw tomatoes. Because you're still making money. You're still making money on whether it's a good ad, whether it's a bad ad. You're still making money. So there may be some investment because the publishers are complaining, but you're still making money. For me, I'm losing users because of a bad experience, and I'm losing revenue. So I have to find a way to ensure that my users are having a great experience and that they're not being inundated by, you know, medical ads or, you know, overly inundated by, you know, these just random types of advertisements that may be coming through the network. So we implement software solutions like Confiant in order to ensure that I'm blocking that out. I wish it would happen further up the funnel, not to eliminate the need for Confiant, but to really help Confiant do even a greater job. And I think that that's where the challenge is that it's not happening further up the funnel to secure and ensure that those types of, whether it's malware, bad actors is coming through. We also own creditcard.com and Bankrate. And who wants to go on creditcard.com and get a fake ad about a credit card? And get, your information taken from you, or whatever, or go on Bankrate and get, a Malvertising ad about, a fake home loan. We want to ensure that we can block it as high as possible so our users don't even have those experiences. And that's what we've been combating at RedVentures over the past year or so, is that ensuring, and as our network comes closer, and even on CNET, where we're not advertising or showing our users malware or misleading ads.
So you hit on a key piece there I'd love for you to expand on, right, which is, in one sense, some of you are going to disagree potentially on this, like mobile redirects and some other forms of maladvertising, malvertising, can be blocked or somewhat eliminated or whatever. But again, the business of fraud, the business of ripping people off is a good business to get into. That's not a recommendation. But there's a part of that where they've evolved, right? And it's less about maybe trying to deliver a piece of code as much as getting you into an environment, that next page where they do have full control. Can you talk about the evolution of
So in the past couple of years, we've seen not a move away from, like there will always be redirects, malicious redirects, but they're using more like social engineering now to use clickbait style ads to get the user out of interest. Like we're all guilty of it. We'll click on something if we're intrigued by it, for the most part, and getting them to another page completely, which usually it's a Bitcoin investment site or something like that. It looks totally legitimate. It's designed by a professional. They've got teams of engineers working on these sites. They're no longer these janky, like dodgy looking sites that immediately you should be moving away from. And we've seen countless stories of people investing in these and for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and then they'll go to the site to check on their balance or maybe to perform some other action, and the site's gone. That's it. It's gone, and their money's gone with it. So it's no longer like an automatic redirect, but it does take user interaction to get to that level, and they've been very successful at it.
And again, from your side, right, like a user that goes from one page user to a 2-page user, right, that revenue lift is there. Yeah. You've rerouted them into that negative experience. I mean, that's the worst than just losing that user. You're done.
That's all it takes. And we were talking about SEO in another conversation, and for CNET, we did a rebrand of CNET in Q2. And immediately, of course, SEO took a hit. Revenue took a hit, but it was expected. So we planned for it, and we're now building back up, and we're now seeing our SEO rebuild. As we rebuild our SEO and get the stickiness back to our site, all it's going to take is one bad ad for a user. Some of you have subscription models. CNET is not a subscription-based site, and people come and ad revenue is all we have. So if a user comes and has a bad experience, a bad ad experience, all it takes is that one time for that user to go away and just go to another site and never come back. So it's really important for us to ensure that we are locking down everything that we possibly can, because that user base and the continual visit of that user, or the return visits of that user, is important for us to be able to generate meaningful revenue. It's okay to have those one-off leaks, and that's great because it shows some type of measurement, but to have return users is really what you really want to have. And I think everyone here is striving for the same thing, to build up their core user base and have them come and stay. So a bad user experience is really what's going to destroy your user base and your user experience and tear it down altogether.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a publisher here, you're about return users. In other words, if you're just playing another game with this and just arbitraging or whatever, fine, do your thing. But like, I think that there's a piece of that applies. So can you talk a little bit? So last we left off with your evaluation process, you had this. It feels almost like a Shark Tank everyone came saying, I want this technology, this, that, or whatever. You kind of made the decision. Could you talk a little bit about where things are today and how all that's piece? And you also said, again, it wasn't your decision, so how did that play that?
I have a question for you. How many in this room actually believe that cookies are going away?
Believes in what?
Cookies are going away. How many actually believe that cookies are going away?
Third party.
Completely. How cookies are going away completely.
At some point I do.
At some point, I mean, there's an evolution.
10 years.
But I don't believe that cookies are actually going to go away as Google initially intended. However, we are trying to find ways to better identify our users, such as, using our PI in different ways, using, whether it's email. For those of us who do not have subscription-based models, we're still using newsletters and things of that sort in order to get email addresses or various other things. So at this point for RedVentures, we're trying to really figure out what our next step is for being able to target and retarget our users. So we are in the midst of doing another evaluation, which does include Confiant, on how to use that, that new cookieless solution, that new identifiable key, whatever we're going to call it now, in order to be able to highly target our users. For RedVentures as a whole, it's important because we have users that are on Bankrate that are also on CNET. We have users that are on Metacritic that are also on GameStop. So we want to be able to identify those users in a way that doesn't really require them to sign up for a newsletter. So we're working with the ones like Confiant in order to be able to identify a solution. It may not be one solution, it may be three. I don't want to go to 5 or 6 because everybody comes and say, hey, implement my cookieless solution and let's try it out, and we get up with a big goose egg. Because we don't have the information that's necessary in order for you to be able to identify those users on our sites. So we're currently in the midst of doing that right now, and I will say that Confiant has brought forth a pretty great proposal. Again, I'm not one, but I'm one of 5 that is making this decision, and we will try to make the most intelligent decision that we possibly can given the information that we have.
Put you on the spot in terms of all of these changes, again, between Apple, changes around user agent, what gets passed on, IPv6, all these things are changing our ability to measure the signal by which you go and determine the source of some of these bad actors and so forth. What does it take, or what are you doing around that particular part? I mean, kind of to your point, like, we're in this point of potentially transition. Doesn't sound like you and I necessarily agree on that, Terry, but that's an over drinks type of conversation I'm looking forward to. But there is a piece of it of just, I mean, talk about Google, Apple, boom, we're not passing this level of information. Some of those were signals that you use to determine something's going on. How are you having to evolve or do what you need to do to protect?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we've been working on now is privacy as well, and we're talking about the cookies going away. Are they going to do that or not? We've kind of got the attitude that yes, they probably will go away, but we can't really bank on that. If they do go away, we're ready for that. There is one. There's a tactic called browser fingerprinting that's used to pretty much identify users against their wishes. That's something that our team, our dev team, has been working heavily on to use that to leverage a lot of the data that may be going away to follow that. So.
You brought up privacy, and I think it's something again that I think Confiant has led some of these conversations around this, and it's something I'm going to be talking about tomorrow in one of my sessions. That, like, to me, consent is king. Right? Because the fact of the matter is you as publishers are the ones that are going out and saying, trust me, right? And then you go and you say, oh, you don't want your data passed on, and you say, hey, SSP, don't pass on this information. What does the SSP do, Cormac?
Yeah.
Pass it on.
Pass it on. Yeah.
Not all of them, not all the cases or whatever, but right, all the, we are being like that's a big piece of what's going on. I'm not sure as much that you're involved in this. We didn't prep for the dive into privacy, right?
Yeah.
But like, between seller, between seller JSON, buyers.json, some demand chain, and some of those other things.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on any of those particular pieces? Are you paying attention to that?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the publishers, these initiatives that that you're talking about, they're still not really that familiar with what could be done, and I think a lot of the platforms, the SSPs, DSPs, are kind of happy to keep it that way to an extent. So that's something that we've been trying to get publishers more involved with, like they can make a little bit more noise maybe to get the attention of these platforms to pay more attention.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because if you're a legitimate buyer, you're buying legitimate. You're not adding malvertising. You're not doing any of those things. It's this other ways that we try to monetize and keep liquidity in our ecosystem, right? It all comes to we want as many people bidding on impressions to raise the price or whatever. And so the doors are there for people to kind of sneak in, and yet we're the ones that are sitting there trying to lock that down. Publishers have been locked down. Buyers know where they're running, but the other way isn't necessarily clear. So that is something for us as publishers to kind of collaborate on and drive from there.
Yeah.
So
Interestingly, the question that came up yesterday in our meetup, so I was at table number 2, and I think that we have I can't wait to review it at dinner, because I think that we have a very powerful idea for what we should do with data. I can't wait to reveal it to you guys.
Wow.
It's gonna be mind-changing, world-changing solution that we can all get behind.
Lynn, are we there? Are we going to call it the Table 2 win? I haven't looked yet.
I don't know.
Okay, then
They
you don't.
may have.
Okay, I was just going to say we could have just called it right there, but I guess you're going to have to wait. Table 2 apparently bonded. You're going to get tattoos and stuff. Or, okay. All right, cool. We're coming up on time here. Terry, for you, just in terms of the other publishers that are in the room, maybe top line some of the things for them to be thinking about in the area of security, and even over blocking and things like that. What are some things people should be thinking about?
I'll leave the stage saying one word: collaboration. It is key for us to collaborate with our counterparts in our companies, whether you are large or whether you're small. It is important for us for a programmatic team. It's a way for us to champion and to evangelize the work of programmatic. We cannot take our 2-person team or a 3-person team and sit in a corner and think we're just going to generate revenue and it's going to be okay. In order for us to move the needle even just a little bit, we're going to have to collaborate across the board, hear other people's ideas, and be open-minded to receiving them. We want to say we know it all, but we have to admit that we don't always know it all.
If I had known you were going to do that mic drop type of thing, I would have made you go first.
Yeah.
Cormac, try to follow that. Last thoughts.
Well, how can I follow that?
I mean, again, I saw that happening. Damn it, Terry. Damn it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to collaborating with other people in the company, I've worked in other companies before where that just never happened. Everyone was siloed. You talked about that. At Confiant, I can say that it's incredible how comfortably everyone collaborates, and that's one of my favorite parts of working at Confiant. So I hope everyone can have a similar experience within their companies and reach out to the person who you'd never expected to talk to at the company one day and spark up a conversation and see where it leads.
Start to build that up.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it's good to end the collaboration piece.
Do you want me to drop?
Yep, and the collaboration, boom, and then gentlemen, good luck getting through security the next time you go through.
Vacation.
And then next time, let me know about the wearing all black type of stuff.
Yeah.
Over there. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for that conversation.
All right, thanks, Will.